What's your name?
My master. Your father called me Alucard.
Hi there, I'm Crispin Freeman, and I play the voice of Alucard in the Hellsing Ultimate OVA series.
And I'm Taliesin Jaffe, and I'm the voice director and script adapter of the Hellsing OVA series. Around 1999, I guess, somewhere around there. A friend of mine who is a Japanese comic book importer at the time, among other things, brought me a couple of the manga prints that had just come out in Japan and handed me this book saying, it's right up your alley, you're going to love it, this is everything that you enjoy. I, having funny hair and lots of black clothing, picked up I just fell in love with this manga, with the vampires, with the violence of it, with the complexity and the fun of it. And at some point they put up they announced that they were doing an animated series and put up a very quick trailer on the internet, and I watched it and within minutes had sent an email to Jonathan Klein of New Generation Pictures saying, I want this, find it for me. And he had apparently also just seen it and sort of had been under the impression of, I should probably send this link to Taliesin. And within a year or two of that, we started production on it. How I heard about it.
Yeah, the first time I heard about it, I had met Jonathan and Taliesin at a convention in the summer of 2001. And after that, I decided to move to Los Angeles. So we reconnected fall of 2001 when I moved to Los Angeles. And they said they were working on this Hellsing show. So that was the first time I heard of it, was actually through you.
Well, it's a new take on a vampire myth, and I think that's rare. And I think it's its own. It really is its own thing. It stands out as its own story and its own take on vampire myth. I'll even go to clubs sometimes. I'll go to goth clubs, and they have the screens that play random footage above the dance floor. And every now and then I'll run into the Hellsing running up there. And I think a lot of people identify with this new telling of the vampire myth, the new vampire for the 21st century that isn't, it's not cyber vampire. It's the new century's vampire. It's not Anne Rice's vampire. It's not Bram Stoker's vampire. It's not anything we've seen before. And it's a new way to tell that myth, and it's a new way for people to identify with the vampire.
How beautiful. Nights like this make me want to have a bite to drink. Yes, I couldn't imagine a more perfect evening.
I got the role of Alucard when I came to LA at the end of 2001. I was basically had a couple of connections. I had met Jonathan Klein and Taliesin at a convention that summer, and I had some other connections in anime through the companies I'd worked with in New York, and I knew some of the studios in LA. So I basically was calling around, working my connections to see if anyone needed any actors for things. And at the time, Taliesin was casting for Hellsing.
Just started
casting for Hellsing, and so he invited me to come in and audition for the role of Alucard, and we actually talked at length about it because Taliesin was really putting a lot of energy into the casting of the show and a lot of research and effort, and so he was you had a very elaborate casting process because you had taken copy from other sources that you thought was appropriate, British copy that you thought was good, and so you were really persnickety about making sure that people had just the right tone and just the right read.
I was at the time. We didn't actually have scripts finished yet for anything, and it's oftentimes we'll start casting before a word has actually been adapted. And you don't want actors reading translations, subtitles. It's just not going to sound right. You're not going to get any idea of what you're doing. And Alucard especially, but all the characters in the show, Alucard especially was a particularly difficult piece of casting because you have such a particular presence in Japanese, and you have to sort of decide how to deal with this in English and what's going to happen when you bring it over, and what sort of presence you have to put forward. And I hadn't figured out Alucard yet, even a little. I didn't have some image in my mind of what he was supposed to sound like in English, and every time I would try and manifest him bring him out of my brain and bring him into the real world. He would come out like Bizarro Alucard, not quite right. And he kept not quite wanting to be born properly, and we tried these big, heavy badasses, and he was sounding like Jean-Claude Van Damme, and we tried different accents, and it was just not, the character was just not happy. He kept going, no, you don't have it yet. And at some point, well, how about Captain Tyler?
So we'll bring in Captain Tyler. He'd be perfect as Alucard. I came in an audition, and we tried Alucard with a bunch of different accents too. Because basically, Taliesin and I agreed, I think, maybe he's been disagreeing with me all these years, but I think we agreed on the sort of motivation behind Alucard. And I think that's what drew you to me as an actor to play him, was because that I had a certain take on his psychology that I'm not sure a lot of the other voice actors had. And we played with Alucard having a British accent, having just a sort of straight accent, having a Transylvanian accent, and because we were really trying to find what was the best way to bring him to life.
And it was quite a fight to get him to manifest properly, as it were, and to turn into a character that would work really, really well in English, and sit there and not be campy and not be silly, but be able to have a sense of humor and have drama and have conflict, and not just sort of not turn him into sort of a brute strong man, but at the same time not make him the Anne Rice effeminate vampire, but to try and kind of make a brand new vampire from scratch, which is sort of what had to be done.
Yeah.
And I think we succeeded. I'm quite pleased.
Oh, good.
There are moments that I smile very broadly, and especially watching an audience watch Hellsing. There are moments when you hear or you feel that reaction that the audience has, of the gasp, of the smile, of the laugh, when they just like, my God, this is the coolest person in the entire world.
Nice.
Yes, he is.
Well, that's always good.
Cut off his head, pierced his heart. He is nothing like any vampire you've ever known. Your tricks won't kill him. You may be the fruit of the finest anti-vampire technology, but 100 years of the Hellsing family's occult knowledge produced this
finding
achievement.
a good group of Brits was fun and difficult and very amusing.
I don't know how you did it.
I don't know either.
It's rather impressive.
Stephen Brandt was a combination of it was luck. It was not my luck either. It was other people's luck. It was Jonathan and Reiko who really pulled that off, and they said, we got this guy, and they brought him in, and I went, ooh.
Ooh, we could
yes.
use him.
And then like a month later, I see him holding like flaming swords and go, yeah, that's going to be my guy.
Flaming sword.
And another film.
Oh, okay.
Like, that's my boy.
Gotcha.
JB was just a marvelous find. I'm not quite sure where we found him. Where I think he came in through the trades. We put out an ad and he answered it. He came in. No, I'm sorry. I remember. He was brought in by Stephen later as a friend of his.
Oh.
A lot of it was friend of a friend of a friend. We played a game of I guess you would call it Ma Bell. We played a game of Ma Bell. And
6 degrees of British separation.
Six degrees of trumpets, and slowly just pulled everybody in. Victoria, who plays Integra, was the very last person we auditioned for it, and she
so good.
Yeah, she's
so good.
She really has that presence in person. You meet her and immediately you're terrified that she's just going to kick them.
Yeah, I don't have to do a lot of acting when she orders me around. I just sort of do what she says.
Katie, I found through one of my own casting sessions that I was running on the side. We were running lots and lots of casting sessions, some for New Gen, some for myself. I have a young talent pool. She came through as someone of this odd choice and came in and did this really sexy. Specifically, it was the read for her when she started sexing up for me at this one point. We're getting really vicious and violent, and had got that moment of making the violence really sexual, which it kind of has to be. And I was like, you're the only person who's figured out that when you're supposed to be angry and awful right now is when you're supposed to be violent. And especially in the original series, it was really only like 1 episode or 2 episodes where we got to do that. But I was like, this is where we need to get, and you're the only person I've met who can get there. So you're in. Yeah, I mean, it slowly came together. It came together also once we had cast Alucard. Everybody else especially fell into place. The villains, the Valentine brothers were, I mean, literally from the moment I read the manga, I knew who the Valentine brothers were. There was no question in my mind. I don't think I barely read anybody else. I have the boys, and they were beautiful and wonderful. And it was really a lot of and then Ralph von Lister, of course, who is the most aristocratic human beings I've ever met.
Does he actually walk around with a monocle?
He should. I think it would really do him well. I think he actually is aristocracy. I think he's got like, I think his family has.
He's a lord of something?
Yeah, he's a von Lister.
Oh, wow.
So he comes in. He's wonderful and brings so much. There's so much hidden there, and I'm really looking forward to having fun with finally letting Walter be Walter the way that I've always dreamed he could be.
Gotcha.
You don't know how to change your body into mist or a bat. You can't heal any of your gunshot wounds. And now that you're out of bullets, you can't even defend yourself. You dare to call yourself Nosferatu? You disgust me.
We try and overthink everything. We look at everything from every possible angle. We try and figure out what's the best way to bring a show like this to the United States. At the time, I was reading an article. I wish I could remember who had written it on base language, on how a lot of drama, when you import it to a new country, you bring it to the accent and the language of the country you're bringing it to. And I kind of wanted to make Alucard home base. We kept trying to make him English, and but we didn't want to make him an Englishman. He's not an Englishman. He's kind of got he's very singular, and so we wanted him to stand out and be very different from everybody else, and we wanted him to be his own unique creature in the show. And my other justification for that is his suit is very reminiscent. It reminded me very much of the archetype sort of suit that an American would wear in England in the 19th century. It was the duster, and that particular type of cravat it was a very American, flashy American flair. And we're like, well, we're not gonna say he's American, because he's not, but we're saying that the audience is with him, and this is how we identify him with the audience. We don't give him an accent. We don't give him he's not from any country. He's from the audience, and he's our guide through this world of Cthulhu and monsters and vampires.
That's very interesting, because I know as an actor, when I spent my time studying in New York and getting my master's in acting in grad school, that was one of the things we had to become aware of, was regionalisms in speech. So you figure out where you can place someone because of their accent. And I worked very hard to remove a lot of the regionalisms in my speech so that I could be more flexible as an actor. And what I didn't know is that I was making myself uncastable, because no one believed I was American anymore. And so it's very funny, and there's been other anime shows that I've done where people say, well, why did you do that character with a British accent? And I was just using my normal speech, and it's just, no, that's not British. You want to hear British? Listen to Integra. That's British. Well, what I'm doing is just sort of, as much as I can, accent neutral. And I think what happens then is when I do that, I end up sounding sort of mid-Atlantic. The sort
very
of
much so.
Not quite American, but certainly not British. So a little more elevated, a little more aristocratic. And sure enough, that's how I got cast a lot when I was doing theater. I would play sort of the well-spoken young male, whether it was Hamlet or Dorian Gray or whatever. And so it was interesting for Alucard to come along and say, yes, he is an aristocrat. He's a count, dare we say. And so he's going to have a certain bearing and royalty to him that is sort of tricky to find in an American. We used to have that notion of American elegant with like Joseph Cotton possibly back in the day, and in the 20s and 30s you had these men who were American elegant. But after the 50s, I think that's sort of
very out of fashion.
Very out of fashion, and so it's sort of tricky to find that. And I was just happy to come along and have Alucard and be able to not only give him that sort of royalty, but also give him the depth and the heaviness to make him a heavy, because that was sort of the first time that I had really played a big heavy in anime. As far as research or inspiration for Alucard, it's funny because as an actor, you can try to go at it from sort of an outside-in way of saying, well, I'm going to find some strange tick or quirk. And certainly you can hang on to a character like Daffy Duck by saying that he's got a lisp And so if you say, you're despicable, you're halfway there. You're getting closer to Daffy. But Alucard, for me, there was no external thing that I came up with. It was an internal idea of what his motivation was. And when Taliesin and I were talking about it, I said, look, Alucard is fundamentally bored because he is an aristocrat. He's a blue blood, surrounded by people who don't understand the culture he came from, because the culture he came from was centuries ago, who have no sense of the finer aspects of life. Alucard is an aesthete, and he likes things aesthetically beautiful, and he wants a good fight. He doesn't have anyone who is his equal, so he's desperate to find something to alleviate his boredom. I mean, that's what would happen if you were first human and then became immortal. You'd eventually start becoming very bored. And when that comes from, once I sort of latched onto this idea that not only is he bored, but also because he's a vampire, there's a whole sexual element and undertone to him. That combine that, he wants anything that's going to jazz him. And so there's a certain hunger, there's certain aggressive sort of desire of wanting to play, wanting some sort of playmate in any aspect, whether it's violent or sexual or anything. And when that starts coming, the more I get into that, the more his voice naturally comes out. Taliesin made a joke once when we were doing the first TV series. There was a scene where Alucard rips a guy's arm off, like he does, and starts drinking the blood out of the arm. And as I was doing it, I looked out the window at Taliesin directing, and Taliesin was on the floor laughing. And I said, Taliesin, what's so funny? What's so funny? He said, you're doing it. What Alucard's doing with the thing, you're doing it, except you're on the mic going, because that's, and I said, well, yeah, I don't know how else to get that
I'm
sound.
amazed you knew that was exactly what I was just thinking about right now.
Because that's how, I mean, that's what he's going to sound like. And so for me, it was very much sort of, well, let me get behind this guy's character of what he wants and what he's about, and then I have to trust that the way that I bring that to life, believable, is going to work with the character.
Yeah.
Because of who I am as a person, where I come from.
I would actually like to ask this really quickly. Is it a lot like going into a theater and playing Hamlet, and knowing that you're the 4 billionth person on the planet to represent this idea of a character? I mean, because there was an Alucard, there was an Alucard in the comic book, there was an Alucard in Japanese, but you can't really take a cue from other Hamlets you've ever seen.
No.
You can't come at it that way. If you do, you might as well be performing a Rocky Horror Picture Show in front of a screen.
Yeah, you might as well be mimicking someone else's performance. And I heard that Anthony Hopkins did that actually when he auditioned for the National Theater. He got up in front of Laurence Olivier and did Olivier's version of, I don't remember whether it was Hamlet or Macbeth or something, but he got up and did Olivier's version, and Olivier said, well, how am I supposed to, refuse the poor boy? He's done me, of course he's part of the company, it's beautiful. But I mean, that's good for an audition maybe, but
you can't do that.
You can't do that in a performance, because then you're just aping someone else's performance. It's similar to, I think, what's happened to me with Superman. I also am playing Superman in one of the Justice League video games. And I think the reason I got cast is that same danger that an actor can fall into, which is, this is a canon character, someone else has done it, especially when we're adapting Japanese animation. We can say, well, the Japanese actor did it, and that's the definitive version. Well, that's a trap, because I could say that Christopher Reeve did the definitive version of Superman, and then what am I going to do? Get up and, when I do my audition, ape Christopher Reeve? No, I came in and I wasn't even intending to audition for Superman, but they wanted me to read for him, so I gave them my interpretation. Look, this is my version of Superman. Take it or leave it. But it comes with a sense of, I feel like I understand the character. I have something to bring as an actor to this part. This is my interpretation. Do you like it? And I did the same thing on Alucard. I said, this is my interpretation of Alucard. Do you like it? We're not going to stress about whether I'm vocally matching another actor. Am I matching the intention? Am I matching the acting? Do you get the same emotional response to how I'm portraying the character as you would from another character? Are you getting what Alucard's beef is? And if we've got that, then the show's going to work. And then it has to be a question of balancing with the other characters as well and making sure the whole thing works as a whole. But it's much more important to me to work on getting the intention of the show, or the intention of the character, as true and honest and believable as possible, than matching any sort of external hoop that we have to jump through, or any sort of external mark we have to hit, because that's just sort of cold and unfeeling.
And that was yeah, and that was kind of what we were shooting for all the way. All the way through was bringing something new to the show and making it coalesce properly.
Yeah, you were obsessed with making sure that the historical accuracy of it, not solely because you were being nitpicky about it, but because you wanted it to be believable. You wanted it to be honest.
I have relatives in Europe. I would get yelled at anytime I made a mistake.
Exactly, because if it's not believable in some sense, it pulls the audience out.
Lose Christmas gift.
They can't enjoy the show. It's all about making sure. So if at any moment someone goes, no, that's not the way it works, then we've got a problem. Then someone can't enjoy the show.
We'll meet again, Hellsing. Next time, I'll butcher you all.
The internet is where most of that happens, and I've learned anytime that I despair about any of my work or feel myself feeling down, I go to the Lord of the Rings websites and read all the terrible things that people write about the abomination that is the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and how it should be burned from record and they should start over. And I go, well, they say much less people complain about what I do, so I figure I must be doing okay.
That's so silly.
Other than my own accent, which at the time I had my family yelled at me for, which I then went back and learned because I was so embarrassed by it. I just sort of, I'm amused occasionally. Someone will tell me that Anderson's Irish accent is funny, and I get to tell them it's a Scottish accent. That's why.
That's why it sounds funny.
It's people can have their opinions, but the accents are mostly real. And funny enough, people tend to not complain about the few that were faked, and the few people who did fake them were trained. And we go to England and no one seems to have an issue with it. That's the only thing that really bothers me, is if people in England gave me grief.
Well, it's not like Kenneth Branagh has a very good American accent anyway.
Well, we don't, and they think you're English accent.
Exactly, it's all messed up.
Yeah, it's all funny. But mostly we get a lot of love from it, and people seem to be pleased with it. I feel it makes it unique.
Well, one amusing thing that happened during the original Hellsing was that Taliesin and I were directing our shows, Taliesin, Hellsing, me, Strawberry Eggs, and when we were casting for my show, Strawberry Eggs, we were having problems casting the lead male. And it turns out that I was probably the best actor to play the male, and it's not something I like to do because it's very hard to play and direct yourself. But I rationalized it because he spends most of his time as a woman, and when he's a woman, it's an actress playing. So I would end up doing a couple lines here and there, and then she would take over, and I was sort of fine with that. But the producer at the time, who happened to be the same producer on Hellsing, was worried that he was worried that, well, he's not going to do that character like he does Alucard. I mean,
unfamiliar with your body of work at that point.
Yeah, he didn't know anything else that I did, so he thought, well, he's supposed to be a young, optimistic gym teacher. He's going to sound like Alucard. This is going to be a problem. So we had to say, well, no, it's going to be fine. I can play another voice besides Alucard. But as a joke, we decided, as an extra on one of the Strawberry Eggs DVDs, to have Alucard audition to play the part of Hibiki Amawa in Strawberry Eggs, the young gym teacher. So I think it's on the first DVD, and I'm sure you can go online and search for whatever code you have to put in to get the extra. There is a scene, one of Hibiki's speeches, when he's about, it's great to be a teacher, and he's going to go out and he runs up and meets all the students and everything. And so we had Alucard do his version of Hibiki Amawa, and I think by the end of it, Alucard was sort of disgusted with it and couldn't deal. So
Hellsing was a very goth rock, punk rock show, and so while directing it, I kind of went headfirst into that, and I was already pretty goth teenager, but at the time I just shaved my head, went dancing every night, got just sort of got into the right energy where I felt like I could relate.
So you're a method director.
I'm a method director. And you will die for saying such a thing. And so I sort of like to be in the right state where I feel like I can actually form an opinion about something. And so being kind of attempting to direct punk rock was kind of bizarre and led to all sorts of things, but all sorts of bizarre encounters with other Hellsing fans who were like, "You can't possibly be doing this for a living. Look at you." What? But eventually, after all of the Hellsing commotion was finally over, at one of the anime expos, we finally got to sit down with the manga creator and Grata and have dinner and talk about the show and our misadventures working on it, and all of the nightmare of dealing with translating the gloves and all the different towns that either did or didn't exist, and the churches which did or didn't exist, and calling women sir when they should be dame, and Alucard, and what kind of vampire he was, and where he's from, and where that name comes from. And mostly he was just really nice and said, "I'm really sorry. This is hard to do. I'm tired. I'm working on manga all the time. I change everything. I'm really not paying attention." And he was unbelievably charming and really fun, and reminded me very much of the sorts of friends I used to have at my old anime club. And he was fun, and we talked about things to do in Tokyo, for fun places to eat. His brother has a restaurant. We talked about Galactic Heroes a little bit, and Gekkei no Kintaro, and just he's exactly the sort of person you want to meet as like a fan of Japanese animation. He's exactly the sort of person that he's exactly what I want any fan to be if they're going to go out and create something and be a fan and go out and become a part of the industry. He's just vibrant and excited and knows how to get excited about something and still go out and do something by himself and make it brilliant and fun. Tons of fun. Great guy. I was very hesitant to cast him at the time. I'm going to admit this, because I felt that he was the closest thing that we had at the time to a name actor, and I felt that I didn't necessarily.
No.
We were intimidated by you. It's true. There was a little bit there. You were Captain Tyler. What can I say? I'm not even mentioning Slayers. I know. I just keep going back to Captain Tyler.
That's all right.
I didn't know if I wanted to feed into that. I didn't know if that's where I wanted to bring anime. Like I had a choice of where anime was going to go. And then I realized that the reason that he was a known actor and was well known and getting work was because he was really good. And I suddenly realized why these people keep getting work. It's because they're fantastic. And I settled myself and I settled my feelings on this by realizing that I was going to have him coming in to do something he had never done before. And that made me realize that this was how I was going to be a part of this and be a part of anime. I was going to take somebody who had gotten a thing and had gotten a niche and beat it with a stick until it was bleeding in the corner. And I'm so glad I did it, because I now get to work with all these fabulous actors, and I realize, and now that we do have actors who have a little bit of a name, and actors that you will go, I will now buy a DVD sometimes just because I know an actor's and I want to hear them doing something new. Mm-hmm. And that pleases me. I'm a little older now, and I'm so happy that I went with it, because God only knows what some of my shows would sound like now if I hadn't. And I'm so pleased with what I had and how well it worked.
We reached a tipping point, I think, with the Hellsing OVA, because when we announced it at Anime Expo in 2006, you had cut the trailer.
Someone had cut the trailer.
Someone had cut the trailer. I don't know who cut the trailer. Someone had cut a trailer, and what it was a trailer of the English dub. And during the trailer, they would show up, Crispin Freeman as Alucard, Victoria Harwood as Integra, and we screened it. We screened it at the Genion panel, and I screened it at my Focus panel, which was packed to the gills. They were turning people away from my Focus panel. I was completely overwhelmed. So there's like 600 people in this room, and I show the Hellsing trailer to them as sort of a treat, and they scream when the actors come up. Suddenly, you have fans applauding for English voice actors in anime, and they haven't even seen the show yet.
Katie Gray never believed.
Yeah, they were applauding us as performers, and I think we've reached that tipping point to where people say, no, there's an actor that I like their work, or there's a director I like his work, and I want to see what they're up to. I want to see what they're doing now. And celebrity suddenly has power. That's an innovation in animation in America. In America, there's never been, no one really cares who the voice of certain...
Other than those of us who are in the thick of it.
Yeah, other than the thick of it. I mean, American people tend to know Mel Blanc. but they don't necessarily know who plays Batman
Ed
in the
Wynn or,
animated
you know,
series unless they are really into animation, unless they go to Comic-Con. So, but in Japan, because there is a culture of regarding the Japanese voice actors as stars in their own right, that sort of culture has come over to the American anime watching culture. So the guy who plays Porky Pig, who's a friend of mine, has told me that I have more friends than he does. Because no one, ironically enough, no one seems to care that much about who plays Porky Pig, but there's 600 screaming fans applauding the Hellsing trailer at Anime Expo because they all want to keep track of their favorite American anime voice actors.
It's fabulous. I'm very happy with where the industry is going. Where dubbing is going, especially. I mean, we're getting to the point now that things which people are saying, that was a pretty good dub. I think 10 years ago we would have been blown out of our minds now. I mean, just every year. I mean, like every year I watch as things get better and better and better, and even stuff that I've worked on. Like, my God, I'm better. I'm even better now. We're getting better. Everybody's getting better.
Mm-hmm. It's a good thing. Better is good.
I want more. I want more good directors, because if I don't get to direct a show, somebody else better do a really good job. Is all I'm saying. If I like that show.
Yeah. If Alucard and Darth Vader would have a fight, who would win? I don't think Darth would stand a chance.
I think Darth would go down like a little girl. Yeah.
I mean, if Alexander Anderson has a hard time dealing with Alucard, I mean, when Darth is a little lightsaber, come on.
I think that's hardly fair. I mean, maybe if Darth had his TIE fighter, I mean, maybe. But really, no, it's still. Alucard is practically. I mean, I don't even. It's a whole nother weight class.
What do you do? I mean, so Darth Vader can, like,